This week on a special episode of Quality Digest Live, we chat with Robert Fangmeyer, Director of the Baldrige Performance Excellence Program.
We'll be speaking with Bob about changes in the Baldrige, developing quality cultures, the overall U.S. business environment, and much, much more when we come back.
Today's sponsor of Quality Digest Live is Hexagon Metrology. Hexagon carries the widest range of quality brands. With an extensive support network, Hexagon is also your partner. Hexagon Metrology. We are metrology.
Welcome back to Quality Digest Live for October 24th, 2014. QDL is your weekly look at who and what is making the news in the world of quality. I'm Dirk Ducharme, Editor-in-Chief of Quality Digest.
Yes, he is, and I'm Quality Digest publisher Mike Richmond. In a few moments, Dirk and I are going to be joined by Bob Fangmeyer of the Baldrige for an extended interview about the Baldrige Program and a lot of interesting things surrounding it. But first, in the news this week is a report from Gartner identifying the top 10 strategic technology trends for 2015, which are as follows. 1, computing everywhere. 2, the Internet of Things. 3, appropriately, 3D printing. 4, advanced, pervasive, and invisible analytics. 5th is content-rich systems. 6, smart machines. 7th, cloud/client computing. 8 is software-defined applications and infrastructure. 9 is web-scale IT. And the 10th and final point, risk-based security and self-protection. Now, several of these items have been covered at length by industry watchers, ourselves included, in 2014 and even before. The Internet of Things, 3D printing, and big data come to mind. I mean, we covered that, all those things on this show frequently, 2014 and before 2014 as well. So, one, I think, or actually two, because they're related, of the technology items on this list, which maybe have flown a little bit under the radar, but are really important, I'm going to get to that in a minute, are the notions of content-rich systems and risk-based security and self-protection protocols. Two very important things that are intimately related that, again, maybe haven't been covered as much as some of these other points, Internet of Things, big data, 3D printing, and the like. These two related points represent the understanding that it's not enough to have security in place on an enterprise scale. Applications themselves increasingly need to have security embedded within them from their origin, from the time they were built out. But to execute the proper security protocols in the proper way, in real time, requires a level of self-awareness from the system under discussion. In other words, the program needs to have a sense of the contextual usage under which users are using these tools. Again, only systems can function properly within these self-defined real-time environments. They can then execute the appropriate security protocol. So they have to function and understand the context in which they're being used in order for the security that's so much a part of this and so important here to be used. That this is almost kind of like, you can almost think about it like a poka-yoke for technology. It's error-proofing so that these systems can't be hacked or mismanaged, or at least it's much more difficult. But it's based on an understanding of the user and what that user needs to do in that very moment. The system itself is aware of what the user is doing. The system itself is aware of what you want to do, and it is able to then establish a security envelope around what you're doing based on what you're doing. It's fascinating. I mean, to me, this is a step, really a major step towards artificial intelligence. Again, it's kind of been somewhat underreported, but it's important. As these systems increase in complexity and power, logic and real-time decision-making is going to be more and more a part of their standard operating procedures. It's fascinating. It's artificial intelligence. It's these systems have been designed now to secure themselves based on the context in which these two things are related. Based on the context in which the user is using them. I can't think of any other term other than artificial intelligence, and it's not so artificial. It's really very logical in terms of how these systems are being designed. It's really a fascinating thing. And of course, all these points relate. I mean, all these 10 points are interrelated, and Internet of Things is really a part of this too. The data that comes from all this stuff is linked into this as well, and that stuff you can be sure we're going to cover as well. I'm going to keep an eye on this one too, because I think it's interesting to see the way that data is being used and the way the technology is enabling people to use that with security in real time on understanding how to do it.
And I'm the one who normally covers the tech stuff. How come you cover
I thought it was great. Well, because you're going to talk to Bob here in a minute. But I mean, I thought this was A really interesting
no, it is,
news space.
yeah.
And Gartner certainly does a good job keeping on top of these tech trends, so we'll keep an eye on that.
Right.
You can count on Gartner doing it as well.
Absolutely. Okay, well, without a doubt, the most notable of all quality awards in the United States is the Malcolm Baldrige National Quality Award, first awarded in 1988. The Baldrige application, in case you're not familiar with, is rigorous, to put it mildly. It's far-reaching in terms of what it looks like within the organization. It definitely delves deep into the organization. And merely going through the process of applying for the Baldrige has reaped benefits for those who have applied, even if they did not actually attain the award. The structure of the Baldrige is widely copied in practically every state quality award, many of which point out that they are Baldrige-based, meaning that they stick to the intent and the structure of the national award, the Baldrige Award. So in that sense, you can think of the Baldrige criteria and the Baldrige structure and the Baldrige mission being everywhere throughout the entire United States. It's been around now for about 25 years. And there have been a few changes. It used to be, in my mind, very manufacturing oriented. It was open to manufacturing service and nonprofits, but if you looked at the winners, very often they were manufacturing oriented. But now it includes healthcare and educational organizations. It used to be partially funded by the federal government through the National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST, and now it's basically privately funded. It's had promoters and detractors throughout its 25 years, but through it all, it has really remained a holistic standard by which companies can compare their overall quality process. And I could go on and on about this. We've covered Baldrige forever, but we are lucky today to have on our show Robert Fangmeyer, the director of the Baldrige Program, who actually followed in the shoes of longtime Baldrige director Harry Hertz, who retired back in 2013. So, Bob, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Dirk and Mike. Thank you for inviting me to be here. I'm very pleased to have an opportunity to talk about Baldrige.
Absolutely. I touched on this a little bit. In the early days, the Baldrige Award really centered on manufacturing and service industries. Those were the categories that were open, manufacturing, service, and nonprofit, I believed. It was opened up to healthcare and educational applications in 1998. The interesting thing to us is if you look at recent winners, is the huge shift to winners in particularly healthcare, but also education, and very few manufacturing winners. Why do you think that is?
Okay, a couple of things. One correction. In the early days of the program, it was manufacturing, service, and small business. And then in '98, we added healthcare and education, as you noted. And then in 2005, we added nonprofit. And it's those newer sectors that seem to be generating the most interest, as you note. However, it should be noted also that applications for the award are not the same thing as interest in or use of the Baldrige framework. So indeed, there have been fewer manufacturing applicants in recent years, but we have had 7 manufacturing recipients over the past 5 years, most recently in 2010. So while healthcare is definitely growing, education is definitely growing, and there's a growth in nonprofit as well, there are many organizations who use Baldrige and never apply for the award. And in fact, there are some well-known name brand manufacturers who use Baldrige but don't let on that they use Baldrige because they consider it a competitive advantage. I had the vice president of a major manufacturer, vice president of quality, tell me that they don't want to release the fact that they use Baldrige because they consider it a competitive advantage and they don't want their competitors to know. So although applications have definitely declined, and that is a concern for the program, there is still a fair amount of use, both domestically and even internationally. A major conglomerate, Tata from India, they utilized the Baldrige framework. They've modified it slightly to become the Tata Business Excellence Model. And they have all of their business units utilize the framework in order to improve their organization and their performance. And this winter, there's going to be a book put out by a University of Maryland professor that details their journey from a very small manufacturer to this massive conglomerate that spans the globe.
Okay, and actually, and I want to come back and touch back on kind of the number of applications and so forth here in just a little bit. But and thanks for correcting me on had my facts wrong here. So we had it started off with manufacturing, service, and small business. Then you added healthcare and education. Then you added nonprofits. So I understand there are also some more changes coming up to the Baldrige as well. Can you tell us a little bit about those?
Sure. Well, part of our goal is to ensure that the Baldrige framework and the criteria for performance excellence are at what we consider to be the leading edge of validated management practice. And what we're trying to do is establish a standard of excellence that helps organizations achieve excellence in everything they do, organization-wide. So it's a systems approach to achieving organizational excellence. And as a part of that, in order to retain relevancy in today's markets, we work very hard to ensure that the criteria are kept up to date. So one of the things that's happening is later this fall, early winter, we'll be releasing the 2015-2016 criteria for performance excellence. And as a part of that updating process, we went through a very rigorous approach to gathering inputs from the community, from beyond our community, to making sure that we were looking at various experts in the field and authors who tend to write about quality, et cetera. And we went through a very robust process of trying to identify what types of changes needed to be made to the criteria. And content-wise, most of the changes for this next go-around will be updating and tweaking and some beefing up of some existing themes that are already in the criteria. Those include, I'll just be really brief, change management, brand management, use of big data and the impact of big data, cybersecurity, climate change, risk management, and supply chain management. And as a part of that, we also made numerous edits to simplify, clarify, and improve the criteria throughout. One of the things we're trying to do with this iteration of the criteria booklet is to clarify our brand. As we've sort of been talking about here, there seems to be a little bit of confusion that the Baldrige Program is nothing but an award program, when in fact, our purpose is really much larger. It's to help all organizations achieve a level of excellence that they haven't been able to achieve before. The award is essentially the carrot to draw people to Baldrige. And so we are certainly more than an award program, but oftentimes that's what we're known for. And that's not bad as long as there are sufficient numbers of organizations that are using the criteria and benefiting from the criteria. So in terms of clarifying our brand a little bit, we're going to clarify that the criteria for performance excellence is just a part of this larger Baldrige framework. So the booklet that most people refer to as the criteria will in fact be renamed the Baldrige Excellence Framework, a systems approach to improving your organization's performance. And we did it on purpose to try and make sure folks understood that this is a systems approach to organization-wide excellence, and that it is more than just criteria for an award. So those are some of the changes coming up in this next iteration. I'd encourage folks to take a look. We'll also be producing a abbreviated version of the criteria, and it'll be called the Baldrige Excellence Builder. So I hope that will be something that folks will find interesting and a little more easy to digest, let's say.
Great, great. I'm sure that they will. You talked about the Baldrige changes. Let's talk about the growth of the Baldrige in terms of applicants, in terms of reach, in terms of funding. How's the Baldrige moving along in terms of those different metrics?
So growth is a little bit challenging in a way to describe or discuss, because as I just said, most folks tend to think of interest in Baldrige as a reflection of the number of awards and award applicants. But the reality is there has always been and will always need to be a exponentially larger number of organizations that are utilizing the framework in order to improve than are applying for the award. And that certainly is the case and continues to be the case. I would say that we know that there is a great interest in healthcare. There have been some studies done that show that 41% of hospitals intend on applying to Baldrige, either to state or national level, and 69% believe that Baldrige principles will be utilized in order to improve healthcare performance by 2018. And similarly, we have a lot of interest in other sectors for things outside of the award. We have other products and services now that we didn't used to have, including the Baldrige Executive Fellows Program, the Baldrige Collaborative Assessment, and the Baldrige Examiner Training Experience. And each of these has garnered a fair amount of interest from service organizations, manufacturing organizations, nonprofits, et cetera. So although healthcare and education and nonprofit might seem to be the majority of the award applicants, there are certainly many organizations who are interested in and utilizing Baldrige beyond just the award process.
Well, you touched on this a little bit. I mean, you mentioned the program that you're offering where Baldrige examiners can, basically you can pay to have Baldrige examiners come in to look at your organization, and that's strictly from as something as a service that would be valuable for an organization. So you have this, what I'm kind of getting around to here is some revenue streams. So I want to talk about funding a little bit. I mean, at one time, as a lot of people know, the program got a fair amount of federal funding via NIST, I believe. And now you are, I think, 100% privately funded? Is that right?
That is correct.
And how has that worked out? I mean, one thing that's curious to me is this been a good thing, a positive thing, or a negative thing, losing federal funding? When you were federally funded, were there hoops you had to jump through that maybe you don't have to jump through now? I mean, how's that worked out?
So, very high level, it's been mixed, I would say. Anytime you lose roughly 90% of your income, you're going to either have to shut your doors or get really creative about how you're going to reduce costs and increase revenues in order to survive. And that's what we had to do. And in a way, that was a good thing. Because frankly, when you have a steady stream of federal funding, you have a tendency to over-design your processes, right?
Yeah.
If we thought something was going to benefit our customers or improve the process, the only limiting factor was our time, basically. And so we had processes that were very, very rigorous and overly complicated in order to try and achieve perfection, which, as we all know, you really can never achieve. So we've had to become far more entrepreneurial. We had to really understand how to make decisions based on whether or not such a process step or such an activity or such a revenue stream was a good investment of our time, and was it worth the cost of doing so. So we've managed to eliminate and rescope and streamline and lean out literally all of our processes. And we've managed to reduce our expenses by over 50%, our staff by over 50%, while increasing our operating revenues by more than 100%. And so we are no longer funded by the government. We have gone from a total of around $11 million in funding from the government and the combination of the government and our foundation to approximately $3 million from our foundation. Wow. So we have been able to overcome that difference, not only sustain the things that we used to do, but create 5 new revenue streams that have been able to help us move in the right direction. Now, we still have a ways to go. We want to continue to drive our expenses down and our revenues up. But I feel really good about how far we've come and the progress we've made. Okay. Now, in terms of whether we're able to avoid various government hoops, et cetera, red tape, unfortunately, for the most part, no. I mean, we are still part of the government, and I think that's a good thing, frankly, because that gives us a connection not only up through the Commerce Department to the Office of the President for our Presidential Award, but also I think it makes a difference in terms of retaining and maintaining our brand. We are a public-private partnership, and it's important that we try and retain that, I believe, because it really is part of what and who we are. I mean, we perform this activity, we manage and maintain this program as a service of public good for our nation. And I think it's important that we continue to remain a part of the government for that reason.
Yeah, no, definitely, we agree, and you know, it's heartening to hear you talk about the changes and the advancements in the program with the changes that you've seen due to funding, and I think part of that, and maybe that's us because we're media people and we pay close attention to this. It seems to us that we've seen a lot more activity on the Baldrige site and social media in general, which has become, you know, kind of much more significant promotional, informational resource for you guys. So has that been a factor after the defunding? It feels to us like you have a lot more visibility really now than you did in the past.
So we began our social media efforts before we lost our funding. But like many things Baldrige, we were kind of breaking new ground within this and e-commerce at the time. So it took a little bit of time and effort to get things up and running. But yeah, I mean, social media has definitely become a very large part of our educational, our outreach, and our marketing efforts. And although we've had to cut back in many areas, we've actually added in terms of our time and effort investment into social media. And in fact, we've recently, I don't know if you noticed, but we recently sort of reinitiated our Twitter presence. So I'd encourage everyone to go check us out or follow us at Baldrige Program, one word, of course. And hopefully between that and Baldrige, you'll learn some best practices and hear about our award recipients and what other users of Baldrige are accomplishing.
Well, there's definitely a lot of good. I mean, we go to Baldrige quite a bit to pick up on the latest what's going on. So I definitely do recommend to people go out to the Baldrige site. That's Blogrige, Blogrige. Look, here's maybe maybe somewhat of a pointed question, but is the Baldrige still relevant today, do you think? Or are other, I mean, everybody, I mean, quality's kind of on, any decent company's got quality on the tip of their tongue, right? And there's a lot of quality management programs out there, and there's Lean and Six Sigma and so forth. I mean, I feel like companies already know a lot of what Baldrige is teaching without actually having anything to do with Baldrige. So do you feel sometimes like maybe you're preaching to the choir?
So that's actually a excellent point, and it is a good sign, I think, because there's no doubt that quality management tools are definitely incorporating some of the Baldrige principles and some of our criteria into their offerings. It reflects progress towards our public purpose and our mission. And in fact, we encourage organizations to utilize those various quality management tools and programs because they are beneficial. But we actually have a larger purpose than just helping organizations improve their quality. As I mentioned earlier on, I mean, we are really focused at this point on something more than just product and service quality and the management thereof. As the drivers of organizational competitiveness have evolved, so has Baldrige. I mean, back in 1987, what we were trying to accomplish was to be able to compete internationally, globally, because our product and service quality did not compare, and we were losing ground. And so as time has gone on, product and service quality has become just part and parcel of good business, as you note. And so today, in order for the Baldrige program and the Baldrige framework to help organizations achieve excellence and be able to establish a competitive advantage for themselves, we've had to become more than just focused on more traditional aspects of quality. In fact, you know, we like to call it a management framework. It's a systems approach to achieving organization-wide excellence, and it incorporates everything of importance to long-term success. The framework is all about achieving excellence in everything you do and improving the entire system as a whole, not just meeting minimal requirements or improving specific processes or units or parts of the organization. And it's that holistic systems perspective, incorporating everything that matters to an organization, is really what sets Baldrige apart.
Bob, you know, we get, obviously we hear, we talk to, very frequently talk to Baldrige winners or people who have applied for the Baldrige and so forth. And so we get a lot of the, you know, the positive feedback, obviously, that you guys talk about and we talk about in our own news. What kind of opportunities for improvement, let's say, have you gotten from the people that you've gone out and talked to, the examiners have gone out and talked to? Where do you think it is that the Baldrige might need to need some more tweaking in terms of really meeting the needs of its customers?
So we actually have done just what you suggest, go out and talk to our community and those outside of our community. In fact, that's part of what we do when we try and update the criteria. We invited 16,000 people to contribute to the development of the criteria this go around. But specific, perhaps maybe to your audience, we did have several manufacturing focus groups a few years back. And we learned a lot from that, and several things we learned gave us reason to think about how we portray the program and the criteria. So our messaging, our marketing, our branding, how we position ourselves, as I noted before. But also, frankly, one of the things that we hear a fair amount of is that it's so complex. It's too difficult, and you kind of opened with that, Dirk, when you mentioned the complexity of the application process. But we have to balance a couple things here, and so we are trying to establish this standard of excellence. And in order to achieve this standard of excellence, it will never be easy. It shouldn't be easy to achieve a standard of excellence. However, it also has to be user-friendly enough that people will be interested in it. So that is really the balance that I am looking to strike. And we have begun that process, I think, in this upcoming version of the criteria. We have done significant work to simplify it, streamline it, improve its internal consistency, remove some redundancy. And then the addition of this Baldrige Excellence Builder, I think, will also help folks get engaged with Baldrige, begin to understand what it's about, be able to begin using Baldrige without having to commit to the larger investment of writing a full application or going through the full criteria.
Okay. Well, Bob, thanks for taking up so much of your time with us today. We really appreciate it. And I honestly, we think you guys are doing a dynamite job on Baldrige, and the feedback that we get from the people we talk to seems like everybody would agree. So you guys keep up the good work. It's good stuff.
Great, thanks so much.
Okay, thanks, Robert. So that was
Thanks,
Robert
Robert.
Fangmeyer, director of the Baldrige Program.
Yeah.
Great to have him get for an extended interview.
It's always great to talk to Bob Fangmeyer. We had him on with Janet Wagner earlier in the year, I believe it was.
A Baldrige winner.
A Baldrige winner.
Sutter Health.
Sutter Health, and to kind of see it from both sides. And this was kind of more of a deep dive into the internal processes of Baldrige. And I liked what you kind of mentioned to him, Dirk, about pushing for opportunities for improvement, because, we all have to take our own medicine, right? We have to listen to our users and improve. That's what we're all in this business for.
It's interesting what he said is that, he was, I appreciate he was really upfront. When you have basically deep pocketbooks and the money's always there, it's easy to over-design, as he put it.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden when you don't have that, it's kind of like, well, what's really necessary? What do we really need to do? How do we accomplish our goal with less funding? And just like every other company, they've had to go through that same process. I think that's great.
Well, I remember, we've covered the Baldrige here, Quality Digest, for decades, literally, and I remember when the defunding happened, there was a lot of debate amongst our readers, and some said, this is going to be the best thing that ever happened for the Baldrige.
Yeah.
Get the government out of the equation, let them do what Bob and his team have done, which is lean out the process, make it better, more efficient, and better for the users, and they've done it. So, kudos to them for doing that. It's not always easy. It's not ever easy.
No.
And kudos to them for doing that. So, thanks to Bob for joining us. That's our show. Thank you all for joining us as well today. We have another great week of Quality Digest daily for you next week, starting on Monday. And next Friday, we have our spooktacular Halloween day Quality Digest live. Dirk's going to dress up like a pumpkin or a sailor somebody, a village person maybe, I don't know. But that'll be exciting. So check that out next Friday and come back on Monday for Quality Digest Daily.
All right, thanks for joining us.
See you. Bye.
Bye-bye.